Welcome to the Natural Genius podcast. We're here to help you tap into your natural genius. Let's go. You're about to meet one of my dear friends, Serana, who is an incredibly competent person. She's been a Jillaroo, a cameleer, raised camels, I think in the desert areas of Australia and other places, a photographer for many years with a successful photography business. She has been part of the selection committee for the Shepparton Art Museum, which sounds fantastic. She is a shaman and medicine woman, and for those who are unfamiliar with that term, it means healer. She can sense into other worlds and is incredibly wise. Recently, she was a tow truck driver. She has helped to bring thousands of people to a little town called Dookie where she used to live, and she is amazing at building communities, growing to amazing humans, and she is a complete treasure to spend time with. Enjoy hearing from Serana. My amazing friend Serana, welcome to the Natural Genius podcast. I might explode with joy.
Sam, it's just been such an honour to have crossed your path at all, let alone to be here on a podcast with you. I'm really grateful for the opportunity.
Whoa, I had a feeling I may start crying on this podcast, and I've started already. Oh, you and I have developed a beautiful friendship.
Yeah, Sam, you know when you meet people that are soul family?
Yeah, it certainly feels like that. And it's actually a lovely way to open because, well, recently I flew back in from Queensland and you picked me up from the airport, and it is the most loving gesture. It's so, so beautiful. And my auntie and others in my family she had that perspective to always pick people up, always drop them off at the airport. Tell me about that. Why is that so important?
You know, our family always relished going and picking people up from the airport because they're coming to visit you. They're coming to spend time with you, and it's an honour to be visited. It's an honour to have people, come and be a part of your life, and it's just a beautiful thing to go and pick them up, and not only that, you get good talk time in the car on the way home.
Well, you and I both love a great road trip conversation. And I tell you what, so in all of the airport pickups, being picked up that I have experienced, never before have I experienced your version, which included Turkish coffee and gelato. I mean, does it get any better?
At the bottom end of the airport where you can watch the planes pretty much land on your head. Yeah, so that's another family tradition that goes way back too. So we just took you right in there. Yeah.
Goodness, I'm part of your family now. I love the gelato and the Turkish coffee at Melbourne Airport. Listen to that, people. If you're near Melbourne Airport, there's a bus, literally a bus, that is underneath
Top of Oakland's Road.
Oakland's Road. Gosh,
On
I
the
love it.
Sunset Road.
We're
Yeah.
giving people good food advice. You have gone through so many incredible chapters of your life. As I mentioned before, as a friend of yours, to imagine you racing across the desert on a camel, or being on horseback in the middle of the desert in Australia, or supporting people that have broken down with their cars recently on the side of the Hume Highway in Victoria and Southern Australia, or seeing you regenerate the land or look after your horses or your dogs. Like, there's just so many things that you can do. So what makes you uniquely you these days?
Well, I think what makes me uniquely me is something that has been a thread that's been a part of my life since I was born. So, yeah, I was born into a beautiful family that was very practical, and practical intelligence was our religion. There was no spirituality. Practical intelligence was everything. And so I developed a really strong ability to, I guess, I guess that's why I ended up, working as a tow truck driver, and, working in the outback as a horsewoman, and, lots of other practical applications along the way because I was very familiar with it. And creativity has always been a part of who I am as well, sort of parallel to that. as I became an adult, I really moved to a sense of a spirituality that I also carried with me into visual arts and photography. And then there's also the thread of this deep spiritual longing, desire, drive that I really couldn't place. As a child, it was very difficult because it was deep and it was driving, and there was no spiritual. We were atheists, basically. It was just
Yes.
life is practical, and that's that. There was no spiritual conversation in my world growing up at all, other than what was happening in my own being, which was a lot. I suggested to Mum once that maybe we should go to church, and because I thought that maybe that was where it would land for me. And Mum, in her infinite wisdom, bundled me off in a car with neighbours that were really churchy and took me to some Catholic church in the middle of Melbourne that was extremely ominous. And people were kind of lining up for their being given bread and wine, and there was a giant Jesus on the cross on the wall, and I'd never felt fear like it. It was just like, this get me out of here and never ever send me back. So I mean, that's how my mum rolls.
I adore you, Mum. I'm glad that she came into the conversation, but man, that does sound ominous.
Yeah, well, yeah. So what makes me uniquely me, I think, has been, still throughout my life trying to place and belong in this sense of spirituality. That even when I took myself into the outback as a young woman, that was because I felt like I needed to find someone to help teach me. I wanted someone to just take me under their wing and show me, how to work with this. And I didn't find it in a person, but I did find it in just being out on land, riding horses. I was fortunate enough to have some extraordinary opportunities when I was out there working, as you say, as a cameleer, taking people out on guided tours along the Western McDonald Ranges. And also I got given the task of helping to re-educate and start a lot of old stock horses on Deepwell Station, because back in the early 90s, they were one of the first cattle stations that sort of sensed into this, there's an opportunity to make money through tourism. So I was employed, sight unseen, to take on re-educating their old stock horses, which had been running wild for several years. So it was no easy feat. But as fortune should have it, a beautiful old, well, he wasn't so beautiful actually, he was a bit of a rogue, but a stockman who was so old that he used to be one of Sir Sidney Kidman's stockmen. He saw me in this, yard with 20 very wild horses, and I was, having to catch them one by one and work with them. And any handling that they'd had been pretty rough anyway. So he was a natural horseman, and he showed me how to take one out of the main mob and put it in a round yard, and within 5 minutes he had that horse following him and standing still while he put a saddle on its back. And he taught me that skill. It was just this beautiful synchronistic crossing of paths that set me on a pathway of learning and developing natural horsemanship. And also it made my job a lot easier. And so part of that job was just riding horses from sun up till sundown across the most exquisite country. And what happened was that I began to realize that the country itself was guiding me, in the sense that there were times when the wind would just gush through if I was going to turn a certain direction, oh, that's a beautiful little valley, I might just go and have a look down there, and the wind would just like crash over the top of me. And I'm like, I'm not going there. We'll just go the other way. And, you know, little trickles of wind that would help guide me home. And it began to really land in me that that country and place are very animate. And when I retired from that job and I handed the reins over to the next fella who was going to be taking over I got the horse riding established on that property, so anyone could come out and ride those horses. And when I handed over the reins, I did say to the new incoming horseman, just listen to the wind, you know, like, because the country will tell you where you can go and where you can't. And yeah, I was fobbed off as a greenie. No, we're not doing that. And the very first ride that they took out, one of the horses spooked into a mulga bush, and the person who was on the ride that had paid for a ride ended up with a mulga stick in their leg, which is poisonous and used for spears. So they ended up having so many accidents that within 12 months the horses were set free again. They couldn't afford the insurance. So I think that
it's gracious.
Yeah, it really helped me to for something of this spiritual realm that it began to land in me through land itself. So now what makes me different is that I'm finally devoting myself to exploring this spirituality. And I've been very fortunate too, because another crossing of paths for me has been meeting up with a native Canadian shaman, Eagleheart, who has helped and become that person who's taken me under their wing and helped to normalize this deep spiritual sense that I have.
And for those who don't necessarily know the word shaman, and you use the beautiful word medicine woman, my very quick reference is healer. Do you want to add to that? What else do you want to, because I want to bring into the conversation that you've had this sense, you've had experiences from when you were really young, and that's what you're talking about, integrating into the now as well.
That's right. Yeah, so ever since I was a baby, I have had the experience of having an ancestral guardian who is not from this time, is not from this place, but I can remember being a baby and being able to see through his eyes. He was showing me his own memory. And it was so profound that I used to cry myself to sleep at night because I had two families, but I could only really see and feel and be with one. And so that character is still with me. And when I met with Eagleheart and I explained to him, look, I've got this character and that character and all these characters, that really became so profound for me. And around 2017, they really rose up, and I wasn't sure if I was needing to see a psychiatrist, or thankfully my husband suggested I go talk to Eagleheart. And when I did, I sat down, he said, it's textbook shaman. Like, sometimes you don't get a choice. And he explained that shamanism is basically a word, or medicine person is a word that describes someone who can see, feel, or hear into different dimensions. And it's quite a normal aspect of being human, but for some people it's very loud. And what do you want to do about that? And I said, well, I would really appreciate your support. And at that point, he invited me to do an apprenticeship with him, which I did for a year and a day. He's still a mentor today. And when I graduated from that apprenticeship, that's when I was gifted the name Whitefeather, and that's why I use the name Whitefeather, because that's the work that I'm working with now. That's the walk that I'm walking.
And Serana, I want to get into what you're doing now and the services that you offer and what you enjoy doing. From what you just said, one of the questions that comes to mind is, from those winds through the valleys that you were almost going to go down in the in when you were working with the horses, and through being a single mum or single parent through different years, or raising two beautiful now adults, to meeting Eagleheart and training with him, did you do your own version of healing through those times with your kids, or do you sort of reflect on the fact that you were actually naturally doing some of the work, or did it really take this apprenticeship with Eagleheart, our dear friend, to open up those channels?
I think that it was something that I churned away with in the background, for sure. That I was always, trying to research and find ground, in how I can land spirituality into real life. But probably up until meeting with Eagleheart, my life was a huge process of karmic disaster. It was a lot. There was a lot. It wasn't pretty.
You are a strong woman.
It wasn't pretty. I got through a lot though, and I did manage to weave a little bit of healing into my journey. With people that crossed my path. I was very lucky when I was living up on the east coast of Australia to have met Salontra King, who is a woman who really opened my eyes to multidimensionality. And helped me a lot, even just the simple act of understanding that you're connected to spirit and you're a part of earth, and to just take a moment every now and then to feel those two things moving through you, and that you are welcome here. We all are a part of earth.
And Ryan, sorry to interrupt you, that can be as simple as taking your shoes off and feeling the ground.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, a couple of years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and that was on summer solstice. And so it was radical. I required radical surgery. It was a real shake-up for me. And at that point, I realized that I need to commit more to bringing this, whatever you call it, this ability out of the closet, because hiding it away, and I think, it was just turning to stone in my body. It was time. So that was a real catalyst for me to start to explore how to use this as a healing opportunity. And it's evolved quite beautifully into a system of ancestral healing. And also, I'm really passionate about exploring perception beyond the thinking mind, where life opens into relationship beyond the human world, because we do have an expanded community of support. We do have an expanded family of support that I can see, and I used to see it when I was tow truck driving, and first respondent. And I would see the physical emergency services, and I would see the non-physical emergency services, and it really started to land in me. This is only very recently. Gosh, I just wish that people could see that there's this micro experience of being human, but there's this macro experience of being incredibly supported. And so another thing that I'm really passionate about now is helping people to strengthen relationship with sensing, and the more subtle, intuitive intelligence that is present for us as a system of intelligence. I call it the spirit mind. We have a practical mind and a spirit mind. We have a rational mind and a relational mind. So I'm really passionate about helping people to trust that sensing is a form of communication, and also helping to build stability through expanded awareness, because when we understand that we are so supported in ways that we might not see, we also understand that we're a part of something much larger, and all of this was persecuted out of us a long time ago. And not so long ago for some. Women were burned at the stake. There was a lot of very cruel process and propaganda that sadly still still flows through us in the sense of discomfort that we feel when someone talks about intuitive intelligence. And it's enough, really. It's enough. I just, even the word woo-woo, it's a word that carries the essence of distrust. This isn't really something, and every time, we use that word in a way that it kind of almost excuses a sense of unease, I feel like we're enabling a very old and cruel propaganda that still flows through our thinking and still flows through our language. And so I'm really, really passionate about enough of that. This is actually, we need to restore the equilibrium of intelligence that includes intuitive intelligence.
And what an incredible guide you are, Serana, because you have that base of incredible practical intelligence and so many chapters of your life, of so many different life experiences, to have an empowered presence and credibility. And what I love, what I've enjoyed seeing in the last short while is you helping people to open up to their, whatever their version of spirituality is, or whatever their version of connecting more deeply into themselves. Tell me more about what you're enjoying right now, especially because you're starting to do more and more ancestral alignment sessions, and even perhaps introduce what ancestral alignment means, because it's such a profound experience from my experience.
What I really enjoy, Sam, and it's probably one of the things that just really brings me to life at the moment, is when people do come in for an ancestral alignment, which is it's a process of healing whereby I can see ancestral grandfathers and ancestral grandmothers and various other guardians of the spirit, of the waters of our being and our spirit. I like to explain it a bit like, we have the above ground world, and when you go underwater, it's a completely different world, but it's still the same world. And when I'm moving into an ancestral alignment, it's a bit like going underwater. I'm seeing into the spiritual world, and how the past, not only for the person that is with me, but their ancestral past flows through them in the present, and how that also affects the future. And so where there is something in the past, whether it be their personal past or ancestral past, I don't necessarily see that. I just see something that symbolizes the disentanglement of whatever is discordant energy in the past. And I see how that then flows in equal measure through to the future. So if there is something really, really blocked in the past, it's equally blocking the future in equal measure. And so it's quite different. And a lot of people come in because it's a shamanic healing, but it is very different. But what I love is that people have the courage, because there is something in them that is saying, this is for me. I don't quite understand it. But when they do, and when they hear back what I've witnessed and what messages have come through and what healings have happened, it's like an acupuncture point has reached deep into them, and it's often extremely moving for them. And that is a great joy for me, to help this process of weaving in the spiritual realm for help and assistance, when it's such a positive and optimistic experience for them that they carry forward in a way that they feel deeply supported.
And I've often remarked to you that it must be so fascinating and such a delight to see the video play while you're doing them, both of past and future, and to have a glimpse into somebody's life and spirit world, and to gain your own learning through that process as well. And when the 2 times that you've been good enough to do them for me, I still think you're absolutely remarkable to go through that process and then to jot things down, but still be in the process, so you're not taking out too much time to jot things down, but the debrief, to be able to be so specific about the film that you saw play out, or the experience that you had, that to me it feels delightfully fair that you get to see these incredible experiences while helping to heal others, and that you get to learn as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of beautiful wisdom that comes through, but there's also some times where I'm just like, I do not understand what I'm seeing here. And it's really important to me that I be able to report back. And so I'll stay with it until I understand it.
And does that mean that you actually say to the guides, like, explain it to me more, so that you can actually get it across? Yeah, I love that. I mean, it feels like you're chosen for this in part because you do have that drive to be able to report back. That's like that honesty and that drive for truth.
Yeah, the drive for truth. It's really quite astounding, and how it's received to people, because to me it can be very abstract. What I'm saying, it doesn't make sense to me. But when I am sharing the movie with someone as I've seen it, it's that point where it does bring tears to their eyes, because it has reached somewhere really deep within them. And like I was saying before about it, like an acupuncture point, it's almost like a spiritual acupuncture point. And that moment of release, you can just feel so much flowing through that was previously stuck.
Absolutely incredible. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention around that process?
I think that it's, going back to what I'm passionate about, it's normalizing. It's helping. I hope that in some way it's helping to normalize something that has been it needs to return. This more relational. It's not just necessarily the ancestral work that I do, but within humanity itself, I feel like there is a real need at this point to restore a less dominating, like human-centric presence. That all solution needs to be human, because I feel that solution in its proper way is communicative with way more than just the human world. And this relanguaging, I think, is well worth looking at, and something that I myself am really passionate about, because I do believe, and through experience, that, I mean, land is animate, the place is animate, and that and we are held and heard more than we realize, and that there is an intelligence there to tap into.
And you're putting your money where your mouth is, because your beautiful property, you're bringing it back, for want of better words. I'd love to hear more about that, and I'd love to hear more about this relanguaging that you're passionate about.
Yeah. So we have 35 acres of land just out of Violet Town that, you know, it's beautiful. It's also been cleared. And it's had plantation trees put around, which is really beautiful. But we are about to embark on a big regenerative project here that we've been doing for a while. For years now, I've been weeding around wildflowers and identifying what grasses belong here, and so there are little patches of land where the wildflowers are able to establish, and the native grasses are able to establish, and that brings me so much joy. You know, we don't have wrens here. I look forward to the day that, you know, that this regeneration brings the little birds back onto the land, and so yeah, that's an underlying project on the land here. It also holds the healing center that I run, and I'm sure that more will come through with, you know, potentially working with the horses and also, you know, other land-based practices. Yeah.
I love that you brought your two horses, Luna and Orlando, into the conversation. So tell me more about relanguaging that you're passionate about. I want to hear more about that. I've not heard you say those words before.
Well, I think that our English language, it keeps us very much in a dualistic framework of reality.
And dualistic, do you mean competitive? Tell me more.
Good and bad. That light is good and dark is bad. But, you know, there's the yes, the no. It's very divisive. It tends to be a very divisive language and society that we live in. And I feel like it's really very important at this point in time to just be cautious of that divisiveness. I think it's really important that we do all that we can to restore a sense of strength that is founded in helping, assisting with peaceful outcome, peaceful process. So I'm really lucky to be living in a community that's very connected. There's a lot of grassroots cultural projects here, and, you know, the mental health and collective well-being that comes from that encompasses all people, you know, of all different types of thinking. But I mean, getting back to the relanguaging, I think that it's really, really something to look at, that, you know, how often we do tend to exclude the intelligence of nature.
Any other tips as to certain words that you could suggest in the relanguaging?
I think that there is, you know, equilibrium, ways of sort of bringing in, for example, our relational mind and a rational mind. You know, that there is a rational mind, and it's very, very important. But also to put some emphasis on relational as well, that it's equally important. logical and intuitive. There is just to bring back into our language a sense of trust in the process of understanding that is not always necessarily scientific and logical, but that there is to put trust in the mystery as well, that is beyond what we can see. And so using words like relationality as well as rationality, using words such as intuition in a way that is held with strength. It's the way that we hold these words, I think, that is a big part of the relanguaging, holding them without any sense of discomfort, because that is that old propaganda that still exists.
Something that you said a moment back reminded me of chatting to Auntie Barb yesterday. Auntie Barb, who we've already done an episode with, and she was talking about Uncle Bob and when they would drive to Melbourne, and we were talking about the difference between chat these days, like getting on and chatting to somebody on WhatsApp or other platforms versus just picking up the phone. And she said, Bob would always just pick up the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing he would always say would be, where are you? Because place is so important. And I do love hearing that. I guess that might be back to the relational comment that you just made. It feels very special to hear those tips and to learn different way.
Yeah, and I think that there are places that we love, and maybe that's because those places love us. I mean, why not explore that?
And as you grow your healing centre in just outside of Violet Town and regenerate the land, there's more and more that can come to be, more and more great energy, more and more great views, more and more personal insights, and more that comes from that.
Yeah, well, let's hope. If not, I'll just keep staying my course.
I want to bring in a little bit of a backstory, a previous chapter of yours when you were running your photography business, and you were part of the Dookie Arts experience.
Yeah.
And also having helped to curate with the Shepparton Art Museum. Tell me about those experiences and what you enjoyed about them.
Well, I moved to a little town called Dookie as a single mother when I first separated with my partner, and I had 2 children. And I moved to Dookie because as a part of my photography, it was one of the towns that I had photographed as for a magazine that was featuring small towns in regional Victoria, in rural Victoria. So I really fell in love with the town. It wasn't far from Shepparton where I had been living. And I was fortunate enough to buy a very cheap house there. It was a beautiful connected community. And so within, I think I'd only been there perhaps 6 months when one of the ladies in town said, Regional Arts Victoria have just come up with this grant. It's a small town's transformation grant, and it's $350,000. Maybe we should go for it. And so there was we all gathered at the local cafe after hours. There was about 6 women, all farming women, or I was living in town, but I had a farming background. And we put together an application, and it was a successful applicant. So along with a lot of other people external from Dookie, who were creatively connected, we put together an event called Dookie Earthed, which was a 12-hour arts event that basically took over the entire town. And we were very fortunate to have in town, one of the people that lived in town, in their backyard, they have an enormous quarry, a disused quarry that is just over the road from the football club. So that quarry became a centre of the arts event, as well as a lot of interactive stuff happening all across town for 12 hours, and it was really quite extraordinary. And so this little town of 300 people in the course of 12 hours swelled to 6,000 people, and flowed through over that 12 hours. 6,000 people flowed through that town over 12 hours. It was phenomenal. And what was beautiful was that, there was a lot of resistance in town to a $350,000 arts event, because there wasn't so much the legacy. There were certain projects that certainly did create things that were a legacy for the town, but there was that old, but what about the roads? Like we need to spend money on, the more practical things. But after that event, people came up and they were so grateful. They said, I really didn't think this was a good idea, but this was, this is just phenomenal, and thank you so much. So it was beautiful on that level, because in the end, it brought the town together in such a beautiful way. And we had our challenges, but that's all part of it too. Of coming to the table with all kinds of different thoughts and opinions, and how do we get around this, and what can we do to sort of make this work for everybody. So that was a really powerful experience, being part of that huge collaborative project. And then I was also a committee member for the Shepparton Art Museum Acquisitions Committee for 10 years. And so for 10 years, I had the honour of being a part of seeing all of the work that was coming into that gallery as, as a part of their collection, and being able to understand and hear why, who the artist is and what's the significance to the collection. And that was a really beautiful experience too. So I have a real soft spot for the Shepparton Art Museum, and all of our local galleries, and the creative community. It's beautiful. And for a long time, that was the way in which this awareness that I have expressed through my work, as an artist, as a photographer, through deep observation and storytelling, and an attunement to place. Creativity really gave it a place to land, and still does.
And Ron, tell me, was it mainly artists that were creating works that represented the Shepparton region, or was it international or national?
All of the above. So, the gallery have a very specific, they specialise in ceramics. And so they have a very specific framework around their collection. And, they weren't just pulling anything into their collection. It had to have more meaning for place. And so there was a framework around what they accepted. There wasn't many that they didn't, but some just didn't suit. It just didn't suit. So
I love hearing the ceramic aspect, and you were good enough to introduce me to Rose B. Simpson in the US, and what a delight to both see her ceramics and also the amazing to see an artist that loved cars and ceramics and had her Indigenous background and her family background of well-known artists, and to put the two together And did she say that she went back to become a mechanic or to learn more so that she could actually put the glaze or do the right thing for the outside of the car? And when you see the images of her car that's been on display in many different galleries and places showcased in America, I mean, that unique individual to be able to bring those two things together and then to work out methods, it's just so inspiring.
I really want to see Rose B. Simpson's work in the Shepparton Art Museum, because it's a ceramic museum and Shep's a car culture.
Oh my God, yes.
There's a lot of car culture in Shep, so I think it would.
God, here's to that, my friend.
Let's make that happen.
Let's make that happen. I think, isn't that the wonderful time that we live in, to be able to see inspiration or be inspired by all sorts of things from all different lands? Is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to talk to?
I'm deeply grateful for you and for all that you do. I'm so pleased that you're doing what you're doing. You're bringing shining light on other people, and you shine very bright yourself. And may this be something that is very rewarding for you as much as you bring through a lot for other people.
Well, it is a podcast that is partly powered by an ancestral alignment, because that was part of its origin. I've been wanting this conversation to happen for a while, as you well know, and it is everything and more than I hoped for. Thank you so much for your time, and what a pleasure and honour it is to be able to share the natural genius within you.
Thank you, Sam. I really appreciate it. Lots of love.
Thanks for listening to the Natural Genius podcast. Please share this with anyone who came to mind and visit us at naturalgenius.com.au. Thanks so much.